Have you ever felt like your peace was shattered by someone's absence? Their silence cutting deeper than any words could, their indifference weighing on you like a heavy cloud. That's the subtle, often unnoticed power of attachment. It's like handing someone the reins to your inner world, letting them decide when you rise, when you fall, and when you feel whole. Slowly, without even realizing it, you become a prisoner to their choices, their actions, their moods. But what if I told you that you don't have to live like this? What if you could reclaim your peace and strength, break free from the emotional chains that bind you? The Stoics warned us long ago. You have power over your mind, not outside events. But how many of us give that power away, letting others control our emotional state? Detaching from people, especially when it's painful, isn't about turning cold or heartless. It's about remembering who you are beneath the layers of other people's influence. It's about reclaiming your inner peace, your sense of self-worth, and your autonomy. It's about breaking the chains that you never realized you forged. If you're ready to explore how to truly let go and step into a life of clarity, peace, and strength, hit that subscribe button. This isn't just about watching a video, it's about choosing to transform your life one step at a time. Together, we'll embark on this journey of self-discovery, grounded in Stoic wisdom and the power of detachment. Emotional attachment is a curious thing. It starts off so subtly, so innocently. A smile, a shared moment, a gesture that feels like connection. Over time, you give pieces of yourself away, often without realizing it. It seems harmless at first, but little by little you begin to lose track of where you end and the other person begins. You tell yourself that love requires sacrifice, that it's normal to give part of yourself away for the sake of someone else. But what happens when you give too much? When your happiness, your peace, your emotional well-being becomes tied to someone else's actions or absence? The more you give, the more you lose. You start to shape your world around their needs, their moods, their silence. What once felt like love slowly transforms into dependency. Their behavior dictates your emotional state. The silence from them feels like a weight. You begin to wonder, who am I without them? Their choices start to control when you rise, when you fall, and when you feel whole. It's easy to lose sight of yourself when you're so focused on another person. But here's the truth. Attachment, when it goes unchecked, becomes a quiet prison. When we tie our worth to someone else's behavior, we give away our power, and we allow them to control our happiness, our peace, and our emotional state. But here's where the Stoic wisdom can be a guide. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds us that we can only control what's inside of us. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Yet how often do we forget this? How often do we let someone else's actions or presence determine our emotional state? Emotional attachment in its purest form is the emotional contract that we enter into when we allow someone else to dictate how we feel. Detaching, however, isn't about pushing people away or becoming emotionally numb. It's not about becoming cold or uncaring. Detachment is about reclaiming your inner peace. It's about regaining control over your emotional world. It's about remembering that your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's validation, on their behavior or their presence. Instead, it lies within you. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from within. By letting go of attachments that drain you, you can find your own strength and clarity again. It's about stepping back from the hold someone else has on your emotional well-being and reasserting your control. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning love. It means that you no longer attach your happiness to someone else's actions or absence. It means that you no longer base your emotional state on their silence or presence. And surprisingly, it's not as painful as it sounds. When you detach, you're not losing the person. You're losing the emotional dependency that made you feel incomplete without them. The key to detaching is recognizing that your emotional freedom lies in your ability to stand on your own. It may seem difficult at first, but once you start, the layers of dependency that you've built up over time begin to peel away. As you detach, you realize that the control you thought they had over you was never theirs to hold. It was always yours. And when you take that back, the chains that bound you, those emotional patterns, start to fall away. What you thought was love may have been an illusion. What's left is your own sense of self, your own inner strength, and your ability to stand alone without feeling incomplete. As you begin to detach, you won't feel empty or heartless. On the contrary, you'll start to feel more whole than you ever have before. And when you release someone from having control over your emotions, you make space for a deeper connection with yourself. You start to rebuild your own worth, not through someone else's eyes, but through your own. Detachment isn't a rejection of others, it's a reclaiming of your own power and peace. So, why do we attach ourselves so deeply to others, even when it hurts us? Why do we allow someone else to have that much influence over our lives? The answer lies in understanding that attachment is rooted in fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being good enough, fear of losing the connection we've worked so hard to build. But once you begin to detach, you'll see that the things you fear losing are not as vital as you once thought. You're not losing love, you're gaining freedom. And that freedom will allow you to love, not from a place of need, but from a place of abundance and self-respect. Detaching isn't about rejecting others. It's about rejecting the emotional chains that make you dependent on someone else. The power to reclaim your peace is within you. It always has been. The moment you realize this, you'll stop waiting for someone else to give you the peace you deserve. You'll start building it within yourself. When you look inward, when you detach from the external forces that dictate your worth, you find your true self. And that self is more than enough. Think about the last time you clung to someone who didn't value you. At first, it feels like you've lost something irreplaceable, something that held meaning, something that made you feel whole. The weight of that loss can feel unbearable. It's as if you've lost a part of yourself, and the emptiness they leave behind feels like a hole you'll never fill. But in reality, what you've lost isn't the person themselves. It's the fantasy you created around them. The illusion that they were the one who could make you feel complete. The dream you built about what they would become in your life. This fantasy is what keeps you locked in an emotional cycle, telling yourself that if you just hold on long enough, things will change. But here's the hard truth. When you let go of them, you're not just letting go of the person. You're letting go of the dream of who you hoped they would be. The moment you release that illusion, the weight begins to lift. It may feel like you're losing something at first, but what you're actually gaining is clarity. It's like wiping away a fog that's been clouding your judgment, and suddenly, everything comes into sharper focus. The fog of fantasy can make you believe that love is enough to make someone change or grow into the partner you've envisioned. But love, in its truest form, isn't about changing someone else to fit your needs. It's about accepting them for who they truly are, even if that means letting them go. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." The key to letting go is not in the person's absence, but in your ability to choose a path that no longer depends on them. The more you hold onto a person who doesn't value you, the more you betray yourself in the name of love. You start to make excuses for them, justify their behavior, and silence your inner voice that knows something isn't right. You become so attached to the idea of them that you begin to ignore the truth of who they are. You convince yourself that if you just love them enough, they'll come around, that they'll eventually see your worth. But love doesn't work that way. Real love isn't about being constantly reminded of your value by someone else. It's about recognizing your own worth, independent of how someone else treats you. When you realize this, the fog clears, and you see the situation for what it truly is. Letting go of someone who doesn't value you is one of the hardest things to do because it forces you to confront the truth that they were never the solution to your happiness. The truth is simple, though. It's not about losing something real. What you're losing is the fantasy, the dream of what could have been, and when that fantasy fades, you gain clarity. This clarity doesn't come easily, and it doesn't come without its challenges. It can feel painful at first, like a part of you is being ripped away. But once you allow that space to open, you begin to rebuild. You begin to focus on yourself, on your own growth, and on the things that truly matter. The act of letting go is not a betrayal of love. It is an act of self-love. You may feel a sense of grief, a sense of loss, but in reality, what you are doing is giving yourself the opportunity to grow. The person you thought you needed was never the key to your happiness. You were always the key to your happiness. The sooner you recognize this, the sooner you can step into the clarity that comes with letting go. And from that clarity, you can begin to see where you've been neglecting yourself, where you've been compromising your own values for someone else's. It's not easy to look at your past relationships and see how much of yourself you gave away. It's uncomfortable to realize that you may have sacrificed parts of your identity in the name of love, hoping that someone else would fill the gaps you thought existed. But once you see the truth behind those attachments, you can begin to shift your perspective. You're not losing love. You're gaining the ability to love yourself more fully. You're gaining the strength to walk away from relationships that no longer serve you and to create space for new, healthier connections. When you let go of someone who doesn't value you, you create the opportunity to connect with yourself again. You stop measuring your worth by their actions and start measuring it by your own standards. The journey of detachment is not a rejection of love. It's an acceptance of the fact that real love begins with self-love. The more you can stand in your own power, the more you attract people who value you for who you truly are, not for who they want you to be. You no longer need someone else to validate your existence. You start validating yourself. The clean break you make from the fantasy allows you to step into the freedom of your own authenticity. You stop pretending to be something you're not just to fit into someone else's version of love. You become your true self, and in doing so, you invite the kind of love into your life that is rooted in mutual respect and appreciation. This isn't an overnight change. It's a gradual process of rediscovering who you are without the influence of someone else's expectations. But every step you take in this direction is a step toward reclaiming your peace and your power. Letting go of the fantasy is not about erasing memories or pretending the past didn't matter. It's about recognizing that the person you thought you needed was never the one who would complete you. You are already whole, and when you accept that truth, you begin to see that everything you once thought you needed to be happy was already within you. The road to self-love is not always easy, but it's always worth it. Letting go allows you to create space for the life you truly deserve, one where you don't rely on anyone else's approval to feel whole. You are the key to your happiness. You always have been. Pain at its core is not something to run from. It's not an enemy to be avoided or a burden that's meant to break you. In fact, pain is one of the most valuable teachers you'll ever have. It's the kind of teacher that doesn't ask for your permission to show up, but once it arrives, it forces you to listen. Most people try to push it away, to numb it, to distract themselves from the sting, but in doing so, they miss out on the lessons it offers. The moment you start asking yourself, "What can I learn from this?" instead of "Why did this happen to me?" everything shifts. What once felt like a punishment now becomes a stepping stone to wisdom. The Stoics knew this truth. They believed that life has a way of repeating its lessons until we learn them. If we don't grasp the lesson, we'll see the same patterns play out in different forms, time and time again. But when we finally learn, when we truly understand the purpose behind the pain, that's when the cycle ends. In that moment of realization, you reclaim your power. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." This is the paradox of pain. It doesn't just harm us, it shapes us. The kind of growth that happens in the midst of hardship is unlike any other. It forces us to question our assumptions, challenge our limitations, and reframe our entire worldview. It's in those painful moments that we discover the depth of our resilience. When everything is stripped away, when we're forced to confront what's left, we find the strength we never knew we had. It's not that we become stronger because of pain, but that we become aware of how strong we already were. But here's where it gets deeper. Pain is not just about suffering, it's about understanding. When we view pain as a tool for growth, we stop being victims of our circumstances. Instead, we become active participants in our own healing. The pain you feel from a broken relationship, a lost opportunity, or a failed dream isn't just random or meaningless. It's there to teach you something. Maybe it's teaching you how to set boundaries, how to stand up for yourself, how to say no when something isn't right for you. Or maybe it's teaching you how to value your own worth, to understand that your happiness isn't dependent on someone else's approval. When we start to see pain this way, it transforms from something we fear into something we embrace. Because the truth is, the more we resist it, the longer it stays. But when we lean into it, when we ask ourselves what it's here to teach us, it starts to lose its power over us. It no longer controls us. We control how we respond to it. The Stoics taught us that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. In every painful experience, there's a choice. You can either let it define you, let it weaken you, or you can use it to build yourself up, to strengthen your character, and to grow wiser. Think about the last time you experienced deep emotional pain. What did it teach you? Perhaps it was a lesson about trust, or the need for self-care, or the importance of authenticity. It might have revealed the areas in your life where you were compromising, where you were settling for less than you deserved. Pain isn't just a random event. It's a signal that something needs to change. And when you pay attention to that signal, you begin to understand the deeper layers of who you are and what you need. It's also important to understand that pain doesn't last forever. Yes, it feels overwhelming in the moment, but the moment will pass. The emotions you're feeling now may be intense, but they will not define you forever. The pain you're experiencing now will not last as long as the wisdom you can gain from it. With time, that pain transforms into something else, into understanding, into strength, into a clearer sense of self. You will look back on this moment not as a time when you were defeated, but as a time when you learned the most about yourself. There's a certain peace that comes from embracing pain as part of life. When you stop running from it, when you stop trying to avoid it or deny its existence, you begin to realize that it's just another part of the human experience. And that peace is what allows you to move forward. The pain may have been intense, but it didn't break you. It may have hurt, but it didn't destroy you. You are still standing. You are still here. And because of that, you're stronger than you were before. When you finally come to terms with the fact that pain is not here to punish you, but to teach you, everything changes. The Stoics taught that suffering can be our greatest teacher, but only if we are willing to learn. If you're willing to lean into the pain, to ask what it's trying to show you, you will find that it no longer has the power to control you. Instead, you'll find yourself on the other side, with a wisdom and strength that will carry you through any future challenges. Because the true power isn't in avoiding pain, it's in learning how to turn it into something that fuels your growth. When you do that, you no longer fear pain. You see it as a necessary part of your evolution, and from there you move forward, not just surviving, but thriving. Here's where the journey gets even more difficult. Sometimes the lesson isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about you. How many times have you clung to someone, even when deep down you knew they weren't good for you? How many times have you ignored your own needs, compromising yourself to keep someone around, hoping that by doing so they would finally see your worth? It's easy to point the finger at someone else, to blame them for the pain you feel. But what if the real lesson lies within you, in the way you allowed yourself to become tangled in someone else's actions, in the way you sacrificed your own peace to keep the illusion of connection alive? Facing this truth is never easy. It can feel like a gut punch, like you've been running from your own reflection, only to find that the problem was always right in front of you. But these realizations, as painful as they are necessary for growth. Every time you've given someone more of yourself than they gave you, every time you've let your boundaries blur in the name of affection, you've betrayed your own needs. Maybe it was because you were afraid of being alone, or maybe you craved validation, the kind that made you feel seen, valued, and heard. Whatever the reason, the truth is that you put someone else's needs before your own, allowing yourself to be wrapped up in their world without considering your own. And in doing so, you became lost in their patterns, their desires, their expectations. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But how can you do that if you've spent so much of your life trying to be who someone else wants you to be? How can you see who you truly are when you're so tangled in the illusions of who others think you should be? The real challenge is in recognizing where you've allowed yourself to fall into those patterns. It's easy to blame the other person for the way things turned out, to point to their actions as the reason for your pain. But what if the real question is, how did you let this happen? What part of you was willing to accept less than you deserve? What part of you was afraid to walk away, to set boundaries, to put yourself first? When you start asking these questions, you begin to peel back the layers of your attachment. It's not about blaming yourself, but about understanding the depth of your own emotional patterns, the ways in which you've allowed someone else's behavior to shape your emotional world. When you begin to untangle these knots, you realize that the only way to break free is to acknowledge how deeply you've tied yourself to someone else's choices. As you begin to see this, it becomes clearer that the real work is in reclaiming your power. You've given pieces of yourself away, piece by piece, without even realizing it, until one day you wake up and find you no longer recognize who you've become. You've built your life around someone else's presence, their approval, their love. But once you start to see your own patterns, to understand where you've betrayed yourself, you begin to rebuild. The key is not in blaming the other person, but in understanding why you allowed yourself to stay in a situation that didn't serve you. What part of you was afraid to let go? What part of you thought that you weren't enough on your own? It's in this understanding that real transformation begins. Jung's idea of individuation, the process of becoming your true self, applies here. The first step in that journey is acknowledging the patterns you've been living in and realizing that they were never truly your own. You were living according to someone else's script, letting their actions dictate how you felt about yourself. The real journey starts when you reclaim your story, when you stop allowing someone else's choices to define your happiness. This isn't about pushing people away or shutting off your heart. It's about recognizing that your emotional well-being is not reliant on anyone else but you. In this process, you'll likely uncover some uncomfortable truths. You may realize that you've been accepting behavior that you wouldn't accept from anyone else. You may see how your fear of being alone led you to settle for less, how your need for validation led you to give away your peace. These realizations sting, but they're also the catalyst for real change. When you begin to see where you've betrayed yourself, where you've allowed your needs to go unmet in favor of someone else's, you begin to understand the depth of your attachment. You start to recognize the patterns you've been living in, and from there, you can start to untangle yourself. The process of letting go doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual, sometimes painful journey of understanding who you are, apart from the person you thought you needed. It's about rediscovering your own worth, your own value, without relying on someone else's approval to confirm it. It's in this space of detachment that you find your true power. And once you've untangled yourself from the emotional patterns that have kept you stuck, you'll realize that the only thing standing in the way of your freedom was you. Emotional detachment is not about shutting down or closing off. It's about reclaiming your peace and understanding that your worth isn't dependent on anyone's choices but your own. It's about learning to stand firm in your own truth, even when it's uncomfortable. When you face your patterns, you stop repeating the same mistakes, you stop falling for the same illusions, and you start creating the life you deserve. Because when you understand your own patterns, when you stop betraying yourself for someone else, you open the door to a new reality, one where you hold the keys to your own happiness and peace. When you don't set boundaries, you're essentially allowing others to tell you how you should feel, how you should respond, and who you should be. It's an unconscious surrender of your emotional autonomy. But when you begin to set those boundaries, something profound happens. You take back control. You begin to decide what is acceptable and what isn't in your life, in your relationships, and in your emotional world. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect. It's a commitment to yourself, a declaration that your peace, your energy, and your time are valuable. And as you set those boundaries, you create space to rediscover who you are beneath the noise, beneath the chaos of other people's demands. Many of us fear setting boundaries because we don't want to upset others. We fear rejection, conflict, or being seen as selfish. But here's the truth. Not setting boundaries doesn't make you compassionate or loving. It makes you a doormat. It makes you someone who is willing to lose themselves to maintain harmony, even if that means your own well-being is compromised. Setting boundaries isn't about being cruel or harsh. It's about ensuring that you are treated with the same respect you give to others. It's about refusing to tolerate behavior that undermines your sense of self-worth. And the more you practice this, the easier it becomes to reclaim your energy, your peace, and your autonomy. One of the hardest things to come to terms with is realizing how much we've allowed others to influence our emotional state. Think about the last time you were emotionally drained by someone, maybe a friend, a partner, or a family member. When you look back, you might find that the reason you were so exhausted wasn't just because of their actions, but because you let their behavior determine your mood, your actions, and even your self-worth. You may have let them push your buttons, trigger your insecurities, or make you feel less than. But once you recognize that, you realize how much power you've been giving away. And that realization is the key to taking it back. Setting boundaries is not a one-time event. It's a continual practice. Every time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, every time you stand firm in your values and needs, you're strengthening your boundaries and reclaiming your peace. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're not used to standing up for yourself, but with time, it becomes easier. You'll start to notice that the more you set boundaries, the more you begin to attract people who respect you, who honor your energy, and who understand the value of healthy relationships. Boundaries act as a filter, allowing only those who are aligned with your values and goals to enter your life. They create a space where you can be your true self without fear of being taken advantage of. But let's be clear. Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting people off or creating walls that isolate you. It means protecting your emotional space from being invaded while still maintaining healthy, respectful connections. Boundaries help you distinguish between what is your responsibility and what is someone else's. They allow you to give without losing yourself, to love without sacrificing your peace. This is where emotional detachment becomes liberating. You can still care about someone deeply, but you no longer depend on their behavior to define your emotional state. You love them from a place of strength, not need. And in setting boundaries, you also begin to practice self-love. You begin to honor your own needs, your own desires, and your own limits. This is the essence of reclaiming your power. The more you prioritize your own peace, the more you build a foundation of inner strength that nothing can shake. The more you say no to what drains you, the more you say yes to what nourishes your soul. This isn't about being selfish. It's about being self-aware, self-respecting, and self-sustaining. You become the keeper of your own emotional world, and with that, you find a peace that no one can take away. Setting boundaries isn't always easy, but it is always necessary. The more you practice it, the more you reclaim your energy, your peace, and your power. And in doing so, you not only protect yourself, but also create the space for deeper, more meaningful connections. So, start today. Start by identifying where you need to set boundaries in your life, and then take the first step toward reclaiming your peace. It's your life, and you have the power to protect it. Solitude often feels like a void, a space filled with loneliness and longing. When you're alone, it can seem like there's nothing to fill the emptiness. You might even feel like something is missing, like you're incomplete without the company of others. But what if solitude wasn't meant to be a punishment? What if it was always meant to be your opportunity for reflection and strength? For many, being alone is terrifying. The silence feels deafening, the stillness overwhelming. But in reality, it's precisely in these moments of solitude that you have the chance to meet your true self, without the noise and distractions of the world. Solitude, when embraced, isn't weakness, it's power. Emotional detachment requires a similar practice, the willingness to face yourself without any external distractions. It's easy to avoid confronting the truth by filling your life with other people's opinions or seeking validation from the outside world. But when you begin to detach from those external forces, when you allow yourself the space to be with your own thoughts, you start to see things more clearly. Solitude gives you the opportunity to become aware of your own emotional patterns, your fears, and your attachments. When you're not constantly reacting to the needs and emotions of others, you can finally hear your own voice. You can hear your own needs, and you can begin to honor them. This isn't to say that solitude is easy. It's not. It's often uncomfortable. But that discomfort is a sign that you are doing the work of self-reflection, the work of self-empowerment. The longer you sit with yourself, the more you begin to realize that you don't need anyone else to complete you. You are enough, just as you are. And this realization is one of the most freeing experiences you'll ever have. When you embrace solitude, you stop relying on others to define who you are. You stop seeking approval, validation, or affirmation from external sources. You start to define yourself on your own terms. In solitude, you also begin to understand the difference between being alone and being lonely. The two are often confused, but they're not the same thing. Loneliness comes from a sense of lack, a belief that you are incomplete without others. But true solitude is about wholeness. It's about being comfortable in your own company, recognizing that you have everything you need within yourself. Seneca once said, "The greatest wealth is to live content with little." Solitude is where we find that wealth. It's where we discover that we don't need anything from the outside world to feel whole. We simply need to learn how to be at peace with who we are. This understanding of solitude doesn't just shift your relationship with yourself, it also changes the way you interact with the world. When you learn to sit with yourself without fear, when you embrace solitude as a space for growth, you become more present with others. You no longer seek to fill your emotional voids through relationships or external validation. Instead, you enter relationships from a place of wholeness, of self-sufficiency. This isn't about detaching from others or isolating yourself. It's about learning to be fully present without relying on others to define your worth. As you become more comfortable in your own solitude, you begin to notice that the noise of the world doesn't affect you as much. The constant chatter, the opinions, the distractions, all of it becomes less important. Your peace is no longer something that can be shaken by the actions of others. You develop an inner strength that comes from knowing you are whole, independent, and enough on your own. The external world may continue to be chaotic, but you find your center in the silence, and that center is where your true power lies. It's also important to note that embracing solitude doesn't mean rejecting connection or relationships. It's about understanding that your happiness, your peace, and your worth are not dependent on others. When you are comfortable with yourself, you can engage in relationships with authenticity without needing them to complete you or validate your worth. You can give love freely without fear because you no longer need anything in return to feel whole. This is the true power of detachment, learning to stand strong in your own identity while also being open to connection. Solitude, when embraced as a tool for self-growth, becomes your greatest ally. It's not something to fear or avoid. It's a space for discovery, healing, and strength. And as you continue to embrace this solitude, you'll find that you become more in tune with your own needs, your own desires, and your own truth. It's in these quiet moments that you begin to realize that everything you've been searching for outside of yourself has always been within you. The world will tell you that closure comes from someone else, a conversation, an apology, an explanation. They make it sound so simple, don't they? Just wait for that apology, hear that explanation, and everything will fall into place. But let me tell you something that might be hard to hear. True closure doesn't come from them. It comes from within you. It's the moment you decide that you no longer need them to complete you. You no longer need their validation, their approval, or their apology. You realize that the power to move forward, to heal, and to reclaim your peace has always been in your hands. We've all been there, waiting for the right words, the right moment, the right sign to finally let go. We cling to the idea that if they just say what we need to hear, if they just offer the apology we think we deserve, it will erase the hurt. But the truth is, nothing outside of you can heal what is inside of you. It's a tough pill to swallow because for so long we've been taught to look outward for validation. We've been told that we need others to give us the answers, to fix what's broken. But real power, real healing, comes when we stop waiting for someone else to give us the closure we seek and start giving it to ourselves. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Closure is not something you find. It's something you create. It's not something that happens when the other person apologizes or when you get the answers you've been longing for. It's something you have to choose to make happen in your own time and in your own way. When you realize that you no longer need anything from the person who hurt you, you take back your power. When you let go of the idea that their actions or words will ever make you whole again, you free yourself. This is what true emotional freedom looks like. It's not in waiting for them to come to you. It's in realizing that your healing has always been in your hands. This shift in mindset is profound because it changes the way you view your emotional world. It stops being about what you're owed and starts being about what you're willing to give yourself. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And here, in the process of finding closure, you are learning to accept yourself completely. You're learning that your peace isn't dependent on someone else's actions or approval. You are teaching yourself that your worth doesn't hinge on their words, on their behaviors, or on their timing. You can heal and move forward on your own terms without needing anything from them. And in that realization, you unlock a new kind of freedom. It's important to recognize that the past doesn't control you unless you let it. And for so long, we've been taught to believe that closure requires an outside event, something external to us, to make things right. But when you start to see closure as something you create within yourself, the chains of the past begin to loosen. You no longer need their apology, their approval, or even their understanding. You've already forgiven yourself. You've already found your peace. When you let go of the need for them to fix the past, you free yourself to build something new in the present. The Stoics believed that what we do now echoes in eternity. What you choose to do now, in this moment, is what will shape your future. The past may have shaped who you are, but it doesn't define who you will become. There's something incredibly empowering about choosing to let go without needing anyone else to provide the closure. It's an act of reclaiming your emotional autonomy, your ability to decide how you move forward and how you feel about yourself. It's about realizing that the person who hurt you doesn't get to control your future. Your future belongs to you. Their actions can no longer hold you in place. When you stop looking outside for closure and start creating it from within, you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start becoming the author of your own story. You take back the pen and write the next chapter of your life, free from the weight of past hurts and unresolved feelings. Think about the times when you've sought closure from someone else. How long did you wait? How many times did you find yourself stuck, replaying old conversations, hoping for a different outcome? The truth is, the more we wait for them to provide the answers we seek, the more we tie ourselves to them emotionally. We give them the power to control how we feel, to control how we move forward. But when we choose to find closure within ourselves, we stop giving them that power. We stop letting their actions dictate our emotional state, and we reclaim our peace. It's not about pretending the past didn't happen or that it didn't hurt. It's about accepting that the past is done, and the only thing you can control now is how you move forward. So, let go of the illusion that closure requires someone else to make it happen. Choose to move forward, not because you've gotten an apology or an explanation, but because you realize you don't need those things to heal. You've already healed yourself. You've already given yourself permission to let go. The power has always been in your hands, and once you realize that, you begin to experience a peace that doesn't depend on external validation. It doesn't depend on anyone else. It's yours to keep, yours to create, and yours to protect. True closure comes when you stop waiting for someone else to make things right and start making things right for yourself. In that moment, you're not just moving on from the past, you're stepping into a future where you hold the keys to your own happiness, peace, and freedom. That's where the real power lies. Once you've let go, once you've reclaimed your peace, the real work begins, creating the life you want. It's not enough to simply detach from what no longer serves you. Detaching is just the first step. The true transformation happens when you start redirecting your energy towards something meaningful, something that nourishes you and helps you grow. For so long, You may have spent your time and energy on someone else's emotional needs, their demands, their wants. But when you finally break free, that same energy can be channeled into your own life, your own dreams, and your own growth. The love you once gave to someone who didn't appreciate it can now be turned inward, towards yourself. It's in this shift that your life begins to take on a new purpose. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you given more than you had, trying to fill a void or make someone else happy, even at the expense of your own well-being? How many moments did you let slip by, hoping someone would value you the way you deserved, only to find yourself emotionally drained and unfulfilled? That was survival mode. You were just getting by, reacting to the emotional chaos of others, putting out fires that didn't belong to you. But now, with your peace reclaimed, you have the opportunity to step out of that cycle and into a life of intention. It's no longer about waiting for things to happen. It's about creating the life you truly desire. It's easy to fall into the trap of wondering why things didn't work out, of feeling like a victim of circumstances. But the moment you let go of that mentality is the moment you reclaim your power. You begin to understand that your past, no matter how painful, is simply the foundation upon which you can build a new life. Pain, betrayal, and loss are no longer chains that hold you back. They are the raw materials for the life you're about to create. You are no longer the person who waits for external validation or approval. You are the person who takes responsibility for your own happiness, your own growth, and your own future. This shift requires a commitment to yourself, an investment in your own growth. It's not enough to just let go of the past. You must actively choose what to do with your present and future. Perhaps it's time to pick up that passion you've put aside for so long, or to nurture the relationships that bring out the best in you. Maybe it's time to find a new sense of purpose, one that fulfills you from the inside, rather than depending on someone else's recognition or love. This is where true power lies, in taking the energy that once went into someone else and focusing it on what truly matters to you. As you begin this journey of rebuilding, you'll find that you are capable of so much more than you once thought. The strength that you've developed through your hardships, the wisdom you've gained from your experiences, becomes the foundation for your next chapter. This isn't about forgetting the past or pretending the hurt never happened. It's about acknowledging the pain, honoring the lessons it's brought, and using that understanding to fuel your future. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" because you've realized that the question no longer serves you. The new question is, what will I build with this newfound strength? You begin to see that everything you've gone through, the heartache, the struggles, the moments of doubt, has equipped you with a unique set of tools. It has shaped you into someone who understands the value of their time, their energy, and their worth. You no longer waste your resources on people or situations that drain you. Instead, you invest them in things that nourish you, that help you grow, and that bring you closer to becoming the person you've always been capable of being. It's in this phase of rebuilding that you discover your true potential. The process of creating the life you want isn't easy, and it's not instant. It's a gradual evolution, a continuous process of growth. But with every step, you get closer to the version of yourself that you were always meant to be. You stop running from pain, and instead, you embrace it as part of the journey. You understand that growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the discomfort of change, and you are ready for that change. When you invest in yourself, when you choose to thrive instead of survive, you send a powerful message to the world. You are not here to settle for less than you deserve. You are here to create a life of purpose, a life of fulfillment, a life of strength. And as you begin to see the fruits of your labor, you'll realize that the true reward of detachment isn't just the freedom from others. It's the freedom to build a life on your own terms, based on your own values, and guided by your own purpose. As you continue to rebuild, remember this. The past doesn't define you. It's what you choose to do with your present and future that shapes who you are. So start building. Invest in yourself. Grow into the person you've always known you could be. And as you do, you'll find that your life begins to reflect the strength and peace that you've cultivated within yourself. You're no longer just surviving, you're thriving. And that's where the real transformation happens. You've taken the first step towards rebuilding your life with intention. Remember, it's not about what you've lost, it's about what you're choosing to create. The power to transform your life is already within you. Now, it's time to put that power to work and start building the life you deserve. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe and stay part of this journey of growth and self-discovery. And don't forget to check out one of the suggested videos on the screen to continue your path toward peace and strength. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal. Keep growing, keep evolving, and remember, the best is yet to come.